Hello and welcome to our monthly mentor webinar. Today we have a guest you haven't seen yet. Jackie, our Deputy Director of Operations, is joining myself, Graham, and Chrissy, our Executive Director. And today we're going to take a dive into the numbers here at tnAchieves. So we're going to go through some data, through some stats. Hopefully, as a mentor, you will walk away from this having a little better understanding of the impact that you are making with your students, with our program, and ultimately with our state Strive to 55 goals. So we are really excited that you are here today. Before I kick it over to Chrissy and Jackie to dive into the numbers, a couple of real quick housekeeping issues. So you will notice that everyone is muted for the sake of sound quality, but you are able to interact with us. So down at the bottom of your screen, you see there's a Q&A and a chat feature. I am going to be monitoring both of those boxes while Chrissy and Jackie are going through the numbers today. If you ask questions that are related to the topic that they're currently on, I'm going to try my best to hop in, interrupt, and ask those questions. And I will also save some for the end. So as we are going through this presentation today, please ask your questions. Let us know if we can clarify anything. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chrissy and Jackie and look forward to the presentation.
Thanks so much, Graham. We're so excited to be back with you this week with more data. For those of you who were able to join Tuesday's Find Your Why webinar with Dr. Bill Fox, we had so much fun with Dr. Fox. We learned a lot from Dr. Fox and had really great feedback from the information that he provided. I think it's a really important grounding, thinking about upcoming industry, reminding us of the importance of earning a post-secondary credential. Data is never, for lack of a better word, sort of sexy to talk about oftentimes, but I feel like I spend the majority of my time each day thinking about data. When tnAchieves was launched in 2008, we decided to be a data-driven organization. It has been a pillar of the work from the very beginning. One could argue it's because business people make up the leadership on our board, but it's also incredibly important to the team that we not only benchmark ourselves on how we're doing, but we make decisions for the future that are very rooted in data. What's the data telling us about our students? Are we in fact making a dent in the universe? We are very transparent and open with our data. What you're gonna find is that we've had significant progress over the last 13 years, but there is plenty of work that remains critical to making sure that we are meeting the state Strive to 55 goal, but honestly, most importantly, to the team here, that we're serving students to the best of our ability. Every program that's been born out of tnAchieves, summer programming, the complete coaching model, everything in between has really been because the data told us we needed to find a solution. We're percolating something right now at tnAchieves that I will preview hopefully for you soon if we can find an appropriate revenue stream. But again, it's because the data is telling us this is what the next step in the process will be for us and what will be most helpful for students. So I am going to, let's see, I should have asked this before. I'm going to share my screen. Do have sharing capabilities. So I'm going to pull up our data. I will say that for those of you who don't know, I've been here from the very beginning. So ID on a whiteboard, very beginning. Graham and Jackie were number 2 and number 3. So right behind me, nearly 12 years together in this work. Jackie is our data gal. Like, she wakes up every day and thinks about the data and cuts the data and keeps us grounded in the big data, but also in the really small data. So while I'm going to walk you through the data, I'm going to defer to her on a couple of items. She's also going to be here in case you have a deeper dive question, because again, she's the data gal. Just like Graham is the external guy, Jackie is very much the internal guy. So The reach, we recently had a meeting with Governor Lee, and I asked Jackie just to start thinking about, because we oftentimes talk about Tennessee Achieves in terms of the number of students who apply for Tennessee Promise every year, which has been just amazing, right? It's what students do in Tennessee now. It's part of the culture. Nearly every high school senior makes the application to the Tennessee Promise. But when we talked about it, we always said, 60,000 plus high school seniors. But now we know that nearly 90% of high school seniors come through our program. You can see here that we're serving 90 of Tennessee's 95 counties. Those 5 grade counties are being well served by the Ayers Foundation. They are the partnering organization for Tennessee Promise in those communities. However, you can also see of the students who do apply for Tennessee Promise that Tennessee Achieves has 98.1% of all applicants. So a significant percentage of both high school seniors as well as Tennessee Promise applicants coming to us every year. We do not take that lightly and want to take good care of our students, as you will see throughout the data. We also make up 78% of first-time, full-time freshmen at community colleges. There's been a significant increase in retention and completion rates since the launch of Tennessee Promise. And you can see much of that is being driven by the sheer number of students that are coming to the colleges being served by Tennessee Achieves and the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. We also are constantly watching cost. These guys often, I will tell you, make fun of me because I'm quite thrifty. We just don't spend money frivolously at Tennessee Achieves. We try to remain true to mission, and we also try to remain every year, actually, should say on budget. We're under budget every year because we're thinking about how dollars are spent. But we do have a $26 per student cost at Tennessee Achieves. The reach here to continue, again, those 90 counties, 74 of our counties are rural counties, 35 are distressed counties, and we have 601 high schools that we serve. That's important because we serve students. We also take care of parents, ensuring parents can be there to help their students reach these critical milestones, reminding parents as well. But we also have this larger sphere that we're trying to ensure that everyone is pulling in the same direction. So this includes school counselors and principals, as well as superintendents or directors of schools. This also includes post-secondary presidents and financial aid and those in admissions. So our sphere is quite large when you think about the number of stakeholders that we communicate with on a weekly, if not daily basis. 67 college partners. And the interesting part of that, they always sort of keep us on our toes, because even under the 13 community college umbrella, they're all doing things a little differently. And so when we think about student communication and we're wanting to provide that tailored experience for students, we're often having to navigate tiny or even large differences between a Pellissippi State and a Ball State so that we can appropriately communicate that with students. You can see here that 11% of our students are enrolled at one of our Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. This is very much it's an overperforming but sort of underutilized gem in Tennessee, in the fact that students can enroll. They're enrolled in trimesters as opposed to semesters. As you all know, it's a clock hour system. It's a continuous enrollment, and students see a great amount of success there in sort of workforce ready type programming. 79% are served by our community colleges, and then we've had a pretty significant jump since we launched in 2014 for the 15 cohort with Promise in that 4-year caveat space, with 10% of our students being enrolled at a 4-year institution offering an associate's degree program. Determining Tennessee Promise eligibility, as you all know, one of the larger deadlines under the Tennessee Promise umbrella is completing the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. Tennessee continues to lead the country in FAFSA completion. This is actually last year's FAFSA completion. We don't fully button up FAFSA until the fall, because I will not explain it to you, but there's a trickle that happens. We're currently sitting at 86% for the class of 2021. You can also see a really huge milestone for Tennessee Achieves, that we crossed 3 million hours of community service being given back by our students. So it was a huge point of celebration for us here. A lot of good work happening with students inside their communities. Many of you make up our volunteer mentors, another pillar of the organization from the very beginning. Graham could tell you that when external states or communities come to us to talk to us about the magic that is the Tennessee Promise program, they rarely want to know about the funding. They always want to know how in the world we recruit, train, and retain nearly 9,000 volunteers every year to work with students. And so you can see here, nearly 72,000 mentors recruited since 2008, 2009. There's a baked in retention rate here. Graham, remind me, our retention rate this year was like so high. I remember it just feeling like really off the chart. I'm gonna say a number and then I'm gonna get it wrong. So what was that retention rate?
I think it was about 74.
Yeah, incredibly high this year retention rate. So thanks to all of you who are returning mentors on the webinar. I know the students appreciate that level of expertise that you're bringing to our program year after year. And the encouragement, certainly we feel like, is the game changer. You can also see here, by design, business continues to lead every year that we do a breakdown of where our mentors are coming from, with 35% of our mentors coming from business and industry. Our K-12 and post-secondary partners not too far behind. I love the fact that we hear from middle school teachers and elementary school teachers who are coming to the program so that they can mentor their former students. Professors who serve and administrators in the post-secondary space who serve as mentors are also excellent resources once the student lands on the post-secondary campus. So for us, this is a huge piece, again, of the work that we do. I always say that it's the magic of the work. The Tennessee Achieves model, again, thinking about if we have these pillars of work, the communication that is involved. There's a mentor handbook, there's a student handbook, there is a parent handbook that's made in-house by our very own Ben Sterling every year. We also work tirelessly on sending out student communication. This year feels especially insane. We talk all the time about the fact that we are constantly communicating via email and text message with students. COVID has presented its own challenges. We typically are in front of students communicating much of the information. This year has prevented us from doing that, and we're really looking forward to getting back in front of our students. But you can see here about 10 million emails sent and about 6 million text messages. That's a 100% growth for us in the text message space from the previous year. So 3 million text messages sent last year, 6 million anticipated by end of year this year. So exponential growth there. Summer programs, we're ramping up for summer programs, and we're so excited to be back in front of our students on campuses starting in July with our traditional summer bridge program. So bridge program is a 3-week academic boot camp that allows students to receive instruction from college professors who are typically teaching remedial math, remedial English, and reading in an effort to take an AccuPlacer, a test at the end, and test out of remediation. We've been operating that program since 2012. It is very much Jackie Hartman's baby. That was her first big project here. So any questions about Bridge, I'm sure Jackie would be excited to dig into with the group. We also, building on the success of Summer Bridge, launched Summer Institute, which is a 10-week credit-bearing summer program that is currently being offered in Memphis, Shelby County. Christine Frazier on our team has led that effort for us on the ground for several years now. The idea here is that students are enrolled into up to 18 credit hours over the summer, because we have what's called a co-requisite model in Tennessee. So the students taking a co-requisite, or I'm sorry, would take remedial math alongside college level math. That's what makes it co-requisite. The idea is that the student eliminates remediation and then has taken that full college course and has that under their belt. So they begin 9 credit hours ahead of their peers in the fall. That program has been an overwhelming success. The last year that we were able to operate the program, 100% of the students identified as non-white. 72% of the students were eligible for Pell, so considered economically disadvantaged, and we had a 98% success rate. So I'm not saying there's a silver bullet, but this program really does work. During COVID, we launched something called Summer Success. This was our hard pivot last year in order to offer something to students. This was College Success, a virtual college success that was offered by the colleges, and had a great amount of success as well. About 75%, right, Jackie, were successful in Summer Success. This is not on the slide, but this year we are offering our own tnAchieves online bridge. We've asked our high-performing professors to record webinars for us. It will be a self-paced, but over a period of time, bridge program for students who are still feeling squirrely about COVID or may have transportation challenges or work challenges over the summer. We want to try to, as much as we can, spread the wealth, because what we know works. We will cross that 5,000 mark this year of students being served by one of our summer programs. Our students have also come from 86 counties, which I think is pretty incredible considering the majority of these are held on the main campus of the college. So students are making travel plans to attend. And then finally, and most importantly, we're seeing a 34% increase in first-year retention for students who are participating with Summer Bridge specifically. We launched with state dollars something called Complete. It is our model to take the most vulnerable student population and increase their retention and completion rates. Complete relies on coaches. We have this amazing, truly amazing, committed coaching staff at tnAchieves that wakes up every day and is proactively reaching out and connecting with our college students to ensure that any barrier that they face is being broken down so that they are more likely to earn a college credential. You can see here students from all 90 counties are being served. I will tell you that 14% is not enough. We need to increase the number or percentage of students being served by Complete because it is working. This was all data driven. This program was born out of the idea that Jackie and I kept looking at data, and what it told us is that the lower the student income, the less likely they were to retain and complete. So the idea is let's put a trusted tnAchieves person in that student's life who is going to get to know the student, who's going to ensure that the student is navigating their college appropriately, and who feels comfortable with all the different facets and turns and curves that come with a college journey. What we're seeing there is that a 23% increase in retention. And then based on what we know about, so you see here, it just sort of continues to build. I remember, I'm going to take like a 30-second bird walk, but I remember when Tennessee Promise was being passed, And we got so much blowback again, around the fact that it was last dollar, and that just wasn't enough for students. I don't think anyone that was at the table thought that this was, in fact, would solve all the challenges. But what we knew was that it would provide a solid foundation to change conversations around kitchen tables so that the student was not wondering how they were going to pay for college. Eliminating that barrier was incredibly important. But what we also knew was that we had structure and scaffolding, our volunteer mentoring program, all our communication that would wrap its arms around students and help shepherd them through the process. And what it's allowed us to do is to start building upon the solid foundation that is the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. So all these different pieces are really there because Promise laid that foundation for us. But what we learned from Complete is that it works. And so can we expand it? The Haslam Family Foundation and SCORE, the State Collaborative on Reforming Education, approached us, and I think we had about 72 hours, maybe less, to develop a model so quickly that we could share with Mr. Haslam around a pilot. And our idea was, let's continue to build upon our coaching model. So it's not under the Knox Promise umbrella. Every student in Knox County who graduates and continues with Promise receives a dedicated proactive coach. So again, someone doing that deep dive with the student on an at least monthly basis. They also, up until this year, have received a book stipend regardless of income. And then finally, we added what we call completion grants, which is often referred to as emergency grant funding. This is for students who come from a household income of $70,000 or less, all being filtered through the coach. So if Jackie's my coach and I apply for a completion grant, that is being filtered and fostered and nurtured through the coach. You can see there, the completion grants are only $310 on average. As the person that's approved every single completion grant since we launched this program with the class of 2019, I can tell you the stories can often be gut-wrenching. I can also tell you that books are incredibly expensive and supplies are equally so. The Knox Promise team did a lot of work in the beginning of fall 2020 to ensure that our students had access to devices and weren't accessing their college classes from their cell phone. And it's working. Bill Fox talked about it. We do have an independent study happening, and what we're seeing is an increase in retention by 42%. And here's the caveat: it just costs more. So if you got $26 per student operating in the tnAchieves space, Knox Promise as the pilot has allowed us to increase the level of support that we're providing these students. So the cost is $400 per student. Certainly we believe it's $400 well spent because we are seeing some really needle moving kind of data in this space. Jackie, anything to add there?
I think you've covered most of it. The thing that we found that coaches and students really tend to gravitate towards is those completion grants. They're really helpful in situations you would not even think about, things that we were not anticipating coming to us. And it also helps the relationship between the student and the coach. So if a student is asking that coach for a completion grant and going through the process to get that funding, we found they're way more likely to continue to communicate with their coach after receiving this completion grant. So that's been a major game changer that I know our other coaches are super jealous they're not able to offer to their students.
It's
So
true.
And Jackie, we had a question about summer programs before maybe you go on to the next slide, about how we market that to students, who's telling them about it, and any potential capacity issues, what we can do to increase capacity.
Yeah, I did see that question come up. We feel like we've marketed it as much as we possibly can. We push it by email, by text, and we really, really communicate this heavily to the high school counselors, principals, and the people that are boots on the ground in the schools working with the students, superintendents as well. So the communication has gotten to students and has gotten to parents. And it's something that we've certainly seen a large number of students apply. So we have about almost 900 students who have applied for the in-person program and still have almost a month left before that deadline. So June 14th is the deadline to apply to that. They don't start until July. So there's still time. If you guys are working with your students, please encourage them to sign up for the in-person summer program. Our online bridge program, as Chrissy mentioned, is new this year. So we really had no idea what to expect with that. We were kind of shooting for serving about 100 students. We have over 400 applicants this year. So they will be starting in the next 2 weeks. June 7th is when they start the online program. So the deadline has passed for them to apply to that because they do have to do some testing and things in preparation for that program. But a bigger number of students have applied to that one than we anticipated. So we're really excited about that program. And then our institute, our summer institute in Memphis, that one is a lot more of an ask from the students because it is a longer program and a bigger commitment for the students. If they have summer jobs or other summer commitments, they may not be able to participate. But we do have over 100 students that applied for that program in Memphis. So that's a lot larger than anything we've served in the past. We usually sit around 40 students. So we're hoping that number follow through and come participate in the summer institute. But that deadline also has passed. So if you have students interested in a summer program, really push them to that in-person bridge program. We also really are pushing the in-person bridge program in general because it does help students become familiar with the campus and with college professors and working with other students that will be college students as well. So they can apply on our website. It's a super quick application, tnAchieves.org.
So great. And so scary also because it was eliminated originally from the budget. And so Graham and I went into overdrive to ensure that the funding would be secured. And we were successful in our efforts. The General Assembly, Governor's Office placed the funds for another year. But we have a fight ahead of us. I hope not a fight, just we got to continue that it is a value add and get it back into the state budget in a recurring versus non-recurring sense. So Graham and I are gearing up for that. But what is super important in the conversation always is it actually moving the needle? And what we see is, in fact, yes, it is. Great. Any other questions, Graham?
Yeah, we've got one. How does a student, from Maureen here, how does a student get connected with their success coach, and how limited a program is it?
So as I said, that's a great question. Only 14% of students are currently being served because limited resources. We would love to serve all students. Feels probably unrealistic to ever get there. But our goal is to build a program that serves all Pell eligible students because you're about to see the reason behind that. And our one of the driving factors in our argument for it. But the coaches actually reach out to the student. So we cohort the students based on income. And then the coach, once the semester begins, will send a direct communication multiple times over in an attempt to meet with the student for the first time. Typically those happen on college campuses. So the coach does go to the student and they meet face-to-face. We have pivoted to a Zoom FaceTime model for this year, but are looking forward to resuming more face-to-face, in-person interaction soon. So great question. Okay, so a further dive into the data, retention. And when we say retention, we mean the student who began their freshman year in one fall and returned the following fall. for their sophomore year. We're going to benchmark you to show you that at TBR reports, so the Tennessee Board of Regents reports that most first-time full-time freshmen, which is sort of apples to apples to our students, they are retaining at 53%. You can see that our students at community colleges see a significant increase to 67% fall-to-fall retention, and then students who land at any college have a 74% first-year retention. Graduation, 6-year graduation, 33% for a student coming out of a community college. That's TBR reported data. A tnAchieves student at a community college, that 6-year graduation jumps to 51%. No one at tnAchieves, myself leading the pack, is thrilled with 51%. Again, we've seen exponential growth since we launched the program in 2008, but there's still more work to do in order to increase that number. You can also see statewide Tennessee Promise retention. So going back, we know that 67% of students are retaining. That was also on the other slide. And we're looking at also at 3-year graduation rate. What we're finding is a 35% graduation rate for our students after 3 years at the colleges. This is going to break it down for us by Pell versus non-Pell students. So this is a proxy we use at tnAchieves. So Pell Grant comes from the FAFSA. It's a pretty complicated formula in terms of what exactly is built into the system of providing what's known as an estimated family contribution, or EFC. That EFC then determines if a student is actually going to receive financial aid help from the federal government or no financial aid help from the government. The easiest proxy to think about it is Pell eligible students are most likely economically disadvantaged students versus those non-Pell eligible students have a slightly larger income. I hate to ever say that they are a high income student, because this is not high income versus low income. There are students that are right on the cusp that don't receive Pell that still do really struggle with how to pay for college. You can see the majority of our students are Pell eligible students, 56% versus 44%, 62% retention for those Pell eligible students versus 72% for our non-Pell eligible students. And again, that 10 percentage point swing holds true for 3-year graduation rate as well. What you should take away from this slide is more students need to be coached, more students need to be supportive, and what we really need to do is level the playing field for the reason I just talked about. If a student is coached, they are much more likely to retain and complete. We are coaching the students who fall into the lowest income category, so fully Pell eligible. So if Jackie was breaking this down, she could do partial Pell versus full Pell. We're currently coaching full Pell and seeing some really great results. We'd like to coach all of these students and see an increase in that 62 and 31%. The next indicator we're looking at is whether or not the student is first generation. And in full disclosure, we talk about this often because it is self-reported data. And the word first generation can be very confusing for students. And so I'm actually working with someone from NYU and someone from Virginia on a paper currently about first generation students. And if you do a deep dive into what it means to be first generation, even in academic papers, there's wide variety in the definition. So no wonder our students are also confused. You can see here, students who are first generation also less likely to retain and complete than their non-first generation peers. So I think no surprises there, right? If both your parents went to college and graduated from college, you are more likely to be from a college-going household, and thus, statistically speaking, more likely to retain and to graduate from college. So again, more work to be done here specifically with those students. And writing this paper, I can tell you from an academic standpoint, what they will tell you is that mentorship, advising, and coaching matter, and it's moving the needle. And we're also seeing that in practice at Tennessee Achieves. Jack, you want to talk through male, female? This is always like a good one to think through, because everyone thinks there's just a vast difference between male and female.
Yeah, we were hoping that the females would really come out strong, but it looks like when we really pull the data, there's not a huge difference. This is just not something that changes the way that we've done any of the things in our program. So the females are retaining about 3% higher than the males for that first year, but then when you get to 3-year graduation rate, the males are really coming in strong, 1% higher than the females. So even if we saw a difference in male to female, I don't think it would be something big enough to only decide we only wanted to serve males or only wanted to serve females. So we do always pull this data just as a guide so that we can see and compare, but it's never something that's made us change any of the things we offer in the program.
I do think that there's something to be said around the fact that more females are going, right? I think that's one thing that this data tells us, that we are more likely to hook a female to come to college. But to Jackie's point, relatively same across success indicators. We are across the state, though, seeing a real crisis with Black males. We did see a 35% decrease in enrollment at the community college level in Black males. I do know that there has been a committee formed. I'm not part of that work, but I do know that there is some work happening at the state level to think about how to, I mean, it is a true crisis, how to really think about a solution for this.
We have 2 retention questions while we're on the topic, and one of these may be coming. I can't remember. I'm trying to look down the PowerPoint here, but one says, does student retention include students who transfer to a 4-year university before finishing an associate's degree? And the second one is the difference in retention between community colleges and TCATs. I'll let you handle those in whichever order you like.
I'll take the first one. It does include. So we do capture any student who remains in the pipeline. So even if a student started at Pellissippi State and transferred to Roane State, that would be considered a retained student, or a student who moved from a TCAT to a community college, or a community college to a 4-year. So if the student remains in the pipeline continuously, that student is counted, for lack of a better word, included in our retention rate. In terms of TCAT retention versus community college retention, Jack, do you have that handy?
Yeah, I do. So it is a much smaller number of students that go to a TCAT. It's about 10% of our population. I think that was on a slide earlier in the presentation, but our retention there is significantly higher. So the students who go to a TCAT retain at 85%. That includes any student who has graduated. So that's a 1-year retention, but a lot of TCAT programs are only 1 year. So the 85% would include any student who has graduated also. And then if you look at our community college population, community college student population, which is the majority of our students, 63% of them come back for their 2nd year.
Great. Thanks, Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're nearly to the end, but a really important one, especially as we think about summer programs, is the college ready versus not college ready. So requiring remediation or not requiring remediation. So the top bar across, you can see how many students are not college ready versus college ready, and our indicator is an ACT of 19 or above. There are a lot of caveats here that I will not let Jackie talk about because it is very complicated. But the 19 piece is where we did the cut score here, because that is considered college ready across the board in a composite ACT space. Percent of the cohort not college ready, 38%, a first year retention of 60%, and a 3-year graduation of 26%. If you look at the bottom, you can find college ready at 54% of the cohort, 72%. So a 12 percentage point swing for those students who are in fact college ready, and then a 3-year graduation rate of 42%. And I love the fact that we've also included our summer program data. Only 5% of our students, but still a strong 5%, and increasing that retention. So again, this is the not college ready student who participates in our summer program and is seeing an increase by 7 percentage points in their retention and 6 percentage points in their 3-year graduation rate. So again, I say this all the time at Tennessee Achieves, but supports matter. Targeted, personalized, student level supports matter. And the data is also teasing that out for us as well. Anything to add there, Jack?
Nope, that's exactly what I was going to say. The more supports we put on them, our data shows, the more success we're having with them. So we do try to do everything we can at scale with the staff that we have. But if you can really push those summer programs, we see they make a huge difference. So get your students there.
Always be closing. ABC.
Love a plug for the summer programs.
We have a question about, do we have any data on what programs students are pursuing at the community college?
We don't have that data.
No.
But that would be data that we could probably find at TBR if someone is interested. I'm sure that the TBR data would include, frequent flyers in terms of majors. I feel like I've seen it actually. So yeah, that would be easy for us to get our hands around. If someone is interested, they could shoot us an email.
Yeah.
No more questions right now. So if you have questions, please send them our way. I think we've just got a couple slides left to go. So if you have questions, please let us know.
So just to close, I love talking about data. I feel like every conversation I have, especially external to Tennessee Achieves, is talking about data. I spend a lot of time combing through the data. But these are real students on the other side of this, students who are extraordinary in their own right. They continue to just blow me away with the fire they have in their belly to overcome all sorts of oftentimes sort of unfathomable obstacles and to find their way to a post-secondary credential. We are currently in the middle of a campaign we're calling Find Your Why. It was launched in February as a way to ignite that fire in the belly for students. It's been a tough year for students, socially, emotionally, academically, and we want to remind students of the importance of going to college. And so these are 2 of our students. We have literally countless, hundreds of thousands of stories of students who have persevered and found success on the other end. But I'm going to college because I want to better myself in the future. I do not have anyone in my immediate family who's gone to college, so I want to change that. I want to encourage others and be an example of how you could work for anything to make a change. It's a pretty powerful statement Tori makes, and certainly what drives the 27 of us at Tennessee Achieves to wake up every day and really focus on this work. I'm happy to take any questions. I know Jackie and Graham are also happy to take any questions that you may have. It's a lot of data. It's like a fire hose moment, right? Let me give you all this data, but it's incredibly important, I think, to zoom out. We often hear from our mentors who get really discouraged around, I had 7 students and I'm only hearing from 1, but I mean, if 1 is changing the world like Tori, that 1 is an incredible success. And so we constantly want to remind our mentors that yes, we're in needle moving kind of work, and that it involves like taking that one student and multiplying it. But it's also like really great when you have one incredible success story. And that's what is motivating and what drives us at Tennessee Achieves.
See, we don't have any questions, but I'll ask one. With new programs that we're creating like Knox Promise and Summer Institute, what do you think is the next phase of our work? If we were going to tackle the next big challenge, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, I have two big dreams right now. The first is to expand Knox Promise. What we're finding is that it is, I always say this, but making a dent in the universe. Like we are really seeing movement at scale for students. That combination of coach and completion grant really feels like an important formula that is producing an incredible amount of success. And so when you zoom into the work at the student level, they are telling us that is game changing. And when you zoom out and you look at it from the perspective of retention, it is also showing some incredible results. And so the first thing on my agenda is more coaches and more funding for completion grants. Thankfully, the General Assembly did grant us a pilot for completion grants, so we will be able to dabble in completion grants statewide for the next 4 years, which we're super excited about. But there's still much more work to do to continue to tell that story and make the case for why the human capital really does matter in this space. And number two, I hinted to it earlier, but I continue to swirl around, and even this morning, Jackie, and as I was driving over early from Nashville, Jackie and I were having the conversation about I want someone that wakes up every day and thinks about transfers at Tennessee Achieves. So many of our students, like 80% plus, identify as a transfer student coming in. They say, I would like to transfer. And sadly, only about 19% of students actually make the leap. And what we know is the financial aid piece is intimidating. College in general at a four-year institution seems really big after you've come from a community college or technical college. And so we would love to be able to launch a program that was really focused on, intentionally focused on the transfer space and an on-ramp for students in a way that they don't currently have it. It's like we do a lot of things for students their first time or in their freshman year, and then we sort of aren't doing what we need to do on this back end. And so we want to fill that gap. So those are the two big areas of work I'm excited about.
Here's a question that kind of piggybacks off of that. For students whose why includes a four-year degree, but are maybe concerned with how they can afford it, what advice do you have?
Yeah, I think that's so great that you're asking that really important question. I think, again, Promise provides that student with 2 additional years to save for four-year institutions. So if the student does want to start at a community college or feels like it's an option for them, they can save for 2 additional years and make the leap into four-year. I'm hoping that we will be able to be more helpful in the space than where we are currently being. I know our coaches are doing a great amount of work just sort of on an individual student basis around transfers and helping students land on their feet at the four-year institution. I also think the student advocating for themselves and calling financial aid and saying, like, what am I missing, right? Like, I would really like to come here, finances are a struggle, and asking financial aid what their options are. I mean, I talk to students about that all the time here. Promises was never designed to funnel every student into a community or technical college. It was about providing the opportunity for every student to have the option to go. And so we want students to go to the place that fits best. And sometimes finances come into that fit place, but I think starting at the community college, ending there strong is also a really great way of ending at the four-year institution those last 2 years and seeing a lot of success. And data actually shows, if you look at the data, coming back to it, the student who begins as a transfer student at a four-year institution is more likely to graduate than the student who starts as a first-time freshman at the four-year institution, which is sort of mind-blowing, but also true.
Looks like we've got one more question maybe, and then you can wrap us up, and I will let everyone on the call know that we are recording this and we will send this to you with the slides, as well as Dr. Fox's presentation from Tuesday. So keep an eye on your email. You'll get the slides for both presentations and the recordings of the webinars. But last question, then Chrissy, I think you can wrap it up after that, is you mentioned that young Black men's registration rates are dropping. To address that, or meetings or webinars that we can expand on this information?
Say again, I think Duncan lost his mind at Jackie's.
Sorry, delivery.
Black males' registration rates are dropping. Will there be any meetings or webinars that will expand on this information, or anything that you think we can do to address that?
Had never thought about doing that, but I think that's a really great idea. So let me wrap my brain around what that could look like in terms of pulling something together. I think it's, like I said, feels like a crisis to me. And so I live in Knoxville, and there is just a lot happening in this space in my community as well. And so it's very top of mind for me. So nothing to report now, but I will put it on my to-do list to think about what would be impactful and meaningful, and bring it back to our mentors and to our supporters. So yeah, absolutely. I love that idea. All right, and I'm wrapping up, Grim. Great. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. A lot of people think data is so boring, and I really get so excited about talking to you about the data. As I said, you're not going to walk away from this data and think like, man, like the work is done, or tnAchieves is just really like blowing it out of the water. We're making progress, significant progress. But as I said, there's still more work to do. My ideal situation is that I work myself out of a job. And so we want nothing more than to move the retention needles. It's incredibly important, not only for individual students and their long-term employability and life, but also for our community and for our state. Bringing workforce to Tennessee is a priority. Maintaining workforce, business and industry here involves retaining and building that workforce. And so we are happy to play a small role in ensuring that we have a sustainable workforce. Jackie, Graham, anything to add before we say goodbye? Thank you so much. Have a great Thursday. I can't believe it's Thursday already. I don't know about you guys, but it feels like Wednesday. Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next month on our June webinar. So thanks again.